So let's talk about lists. We all make lists sometimes to help us remember what to buy, or who to call, or to not forget the names of all our cousins. But when it comes to picking up a language, how much of it is just making vast lists of everything that we hear? And do little kids form different kinds of lists than adults do? If we want to find out answers to these questions, it turns out all you need is WOG. I'm Moti Lieberman, and this is the Ling Space.
Welcome to the Ling Space.
So there's no question, there's a lot of memorization that goes into learning a language. Whether you're acquiring your first language as a baby, or if it's your second or third or seventh time rolling up all that linguistic goodness, there's always a big list of things you need to pick up. We all have some knowledge about how languages can work in our heads already. Universal grammar gives us a skeleton to weave the tendons and sinews of our target language around. But there's still just a lot of things that come down to filling out and storing lists in our brain. So what kinds of lists? We need to get lists of anything in our language that's arbitrary, so anything that doesn't have a deep reason for being one way and not another. That includes things like phonemes, or what sounds really matter for the language that you're learning. Languages divide up their possible set of sounds differently, and every time you learn a new one, you need to learn a new way of mapping particular sound waves to categories in the mind. There's no fundamental reason to divide E from I in English, but not in Turkish or Spanish, for example. Or to divide B from B in French and Thai, but not in English and Irish. English has a different list of phonemes from Yucatec Maya or Nepali or Sesotho. And learning any of those languages means you need to memorize what matters and what doesn't. But the biggest thing of all that we need to memorize when we learn a new language are the words, or more specifically the morphemes, those smallest pairings of sound and meaning. We don't come into the world knowing how to say anything in our languages. We have to pick up all those meaning bits. If you look at a word like rainbow, there's nothing inherent to a rainbow that means it has to be called rainbow. If there were, it wouldn't get pronounced arc-en-ciel in French, niji in Japanese, or bahagari in Tagalog. It might seem to a native English speaker that rainbow is the only appropriate word for that colorful, watery sky phenomenon. But other languages do just fine using very, very different sounding words to express that meaning. A Japanese speaker will think l'arc-en-ciel is just as weird as a French speaker thinks it's natural. So you have to memorize all the morphemes of your language. There's nothing else for it. And it's not just the lexical morphemes, the ones that point to real concrete things and actions out in the world, like round or roll or prince. It's also the little functional morphemes, the ones that tie everything together. Functional morphemes tell us about number and tense, and whether a noun is meant to serve as the subject or the object for a sentence, or whether an adjective is meant to be interpreted with one noun or a different one. We have morphemes for all of that too, and if we don't memorize those, we'll be stuck, just unable to express what we're thinking. Filling up our mental list of morphemes to get everything we need for whatever language we're learning is actually a pretty challenging task. After all, speech comes at us in this continuous stream, words just flowing in on the sound waves which we then have to chop into meaningful bits. And if that's not hard enough, often these morphemes come together in bunches, a big meaningful root with a bunch of little morphemes telling you when or where or even how something happened. But it's not like as proficient adult speakers of a language we can't work this out. Our brains are nimble, and we don't generally have any trouble knocking even complex words apart. Just look at you listening to this. You didn't have any trouble getting that ing off listen and knowing that it meant the listen was going on over a period of time. You didn't have any problems hearing problems and knowing that that meant there was more than one problem. We're pretty good. So here's the question though, are we always good? After all, fishing things out of the speech stream and working out really quickly what they are is a tough task. Maybe this is an ability we pick up as we get older. It's easy to imagine that earlier on, as little kids, we just hear these words coming at us and fill up our mental lists with chunks of meaning. For a single dictionary entry, we could end up with more than one morpheme. It's easy to imagine having separate entries for, say, race and raced, or king and kings. Then, later on, as you got better at picking off those single sounds from the end and recognizing them as their own morphemes, you'd just go back through your mental lists and prune off the redundant parts. Now, if you've been watching with us all along, you might find this idea unlikely, since little kids usually have a very solid handle on language. But as we'll talk about more in the future, when kids do have problems, it's often because the cognitive demands of processing and producing language in real time get to be too much, and so some part or another gets lost. The language knowledge is good, but the wiring hasn't caught up yet, and so part of the message just falls away into the cosmos. For now, if we assume that heavy processing situations can cause problems for our little humans, then stripping off morphemes as fast as they come in is the exact kind of situation we think they might screw up. So what do we do? How can we know that they're not just memorizing and then fixing their lists? Well, fortunately, we have a really simple, powerful test that we can use to scope that out. It goes something like this. If little kids memorize everything that they hear without plucking apart the morphemes, what will they do when they hear a word that they've never encountered before? If they haven't ever seen it, then it can't be on their lists. So will they be lost, or will they be okay? Linguist Jean Berko-Gleason investigated this all the way back in 1958, with a test that's become one of the most famous in all of linguistics. The WUG test invited English-speaking kids from ages 4 to 7 to answer questions about scenarios involving made-up but plausible words, like WUG or ZIB. The most well-known example goes like this. First, kids see a cute little imaginary creature. This is a WUG, they're told. Then they see a picture with 2 cute little imaginary creatures. Then they're told, now there are 2 of them. There are 2... And the kids have to finish the sentence. Now, what do you think they say? Well, what would you say? If you said WUGs, then you and those little kids have something in common. You've both internalized how the rules of English plurals work. But let's go back to the idea of memorizing things. What's really amazing about the WUG test and what makes it so important is that kids pretty much all said WUGs. None of them had ever heard the word before because Jean Berko-Gleason made it up. So they couldn't have memorized it and put it on their big word list. Kids didn't say WUGs, or WUG-I, or WAIG, or WUGGN, and they didn't just shrug or shake their heads. They said it correctly, because they had more than just a big old list of words in their heads. What this tells us is that we memorize more than just words. Even as kids, we break down words into their morphemes, and we learn the rules of how our language works. And this isn't limited to plurals either. The WUG test has been used in a whole bunch of different languages to test a whole bunch of different things. From Taiwanese double reduplication, to Hungarian vowel harmony, to Russian ur deletion, the WUG test's been deployed to look at a wide array of morphological and phonological phenomena. It's powerful, versatile, and also pretty fun. So in order for our language to roll along nicely, we need to have good lists of the sounds and morphemes that we use. But we need to have rules too, in order to know how to put those lists together. And it's not just adults who know how to delicately slice off morphemes and make the rules work, kids do too. And we know that thanks to the power of WUG. So we've reached the end of the LingSpace for this week. If you were rolling up all my words and sentences, you learned that we have to memorize the things in language that are arbitrary, like phonemes and morphemes, that kids build the same kinds of linguistic lists that adults do, and that we can use the WUG test to uncover that information. The LingSpace is produced by me, Moti Lieberman. It's directed by Delilise Prévost, and it's written by both of us. Our production assistant is Georges Coulombe, our music and sound design is by Shane Turner, and our graphics team is Atelier Muse. We're down in the comments below, or you can bring the discussion back over to our website where we have some extra material on this topic. Check us out on Tumblr, Twitter, and Facebook, and if you want to keep expanding your own personal LingSpace, please subscribe. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Salang Hantle!